You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddick, but my friends call me Spanners. So, let's be friends. Thank you to Stuffy for giving me the day off on the weekend with more content this year. It's great to know we have backup hosts and co-hosts. Great squad depth in the Missed Apex crew. Today is our NASCAR special. Wait. Don't go anywhere. It's midweek. We will be back on Sunday for a news show, but I want you to settle in and listen to this. Give it a chance, because I'm going to take you into the heart of a top race team in a top race series with the kind of access that is beyond our wildest dreams as podcasters in a backwater countryside shed made of wood and love and hard work. It was incredible where we were, and I want to take you on a journey with me. Matt and I were invited to hang out with the president of 2311 NASCAR team, and by hang out, we were literally hanging out with the boss of the NASCAR team. They took me on a tour of Airspeed. We had dinner, went to a dive bar with a team principal, and got to learn secrets about F1 that I will never reveal. I'll tell you all later after the NASCAR show. And then as for the race weekend itself, we hung out with their head of comms, David Schaefer, who we basically shadowed throughout the whole race weekend. Wherever he and the drivers went, we went. It was amazing. So coming up, we're going to lead with an interview of their superstar drivers, Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, in their state-of-the-art hauler, that's motorhome, in Formula One. And then Matt will join us after that, and I'll tell him about my tour of the factory. Then we had a great chat with their chief strategist, who was cool, but a mega nerd, and he and Matt were so deep into strategy and tyre talk on the Sunday that the team boss had to tell me to get Matt away from him so that he could do the strategy for the race on the Sunday. And we speak to their sim guy and find out how I matched up against the pros. So let's start off with the driver interviews. Here's me interviewing two legit celebrities on a race weekend. I can't believe this, guys. We have the opportunity to catch up with the 2311 drivers, Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick. And I apologise, firstly. Hello. And I apologise that having to speak to some random Englishman who doesn't know an awful lot, but hopefully we can educate some of the Missed Apex viewers. So first question I want to ask is, you two seem to get along. So after qualifying, I saw you genuinely in between sessions sharing lines. And in Formula One, we're used to your teammate really being your first rival. So why do you get along?
He's all right. He's a good guy.
Do we get along? I would love to be like the F1 type.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
I would love that.
Be rivals?
Yeah.
Not really rivals, but just leave me the hell alone.
There you have
Vice
it.
versa.
The less I talk, the more chance I'm going to have. So
I genuinely wasn't expecting that as a first answer, but that's fantastic. But no, there seems to be a spirit of sharing in the team. So if you guys spot something, are you sharing it with each other or keeping it close?
No, I guess that's just the difference between NASCAR and F1. I mean, from even starting out when you had teammates, you would work together, right? So obviously, yes, there's a bit of bragging rights if, he's got the pole and I'm like, damn, that sucks. But at the same time, you're happy for the team. And so, we haven't had much. This is a brand new team, right? 4 years in, and we haven't really had much animosity at all. And so you try to keep that, because you start tearing apart the team.
Yeah.
And I think F1 kind of understands that going in, that
Yes,
there's going to be a
in.
split.
Yeah. And if you meet each other on track, is there any kind of a consideration like, oh no, that's Tyler, I'd better move over faster or less fast?
You got split-second decisions to make around this guy for sure. In the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
If you miss it. But no, I think we race each other fairly respectful. We've had some run-ins before we were teammates.
and there's certainly been mistakes along the way too, but it's something. He's helped me through it. There's definitely times to talk about certain things that happen and work them out, so that split doesn't grow. So
yeah.
So it's a normal thing in Formula One, especially with competitive teammates, to have sort of an established rules of racing between the teammates. Yeah. Is that something the team has ever formally done, or is it just something you negotiate amongst yourselves?
No, I think here you notice, like, if Tyler's faster, like, okay, well, you're faster, you're going to pass me. Or if you see that you're holding up Tyler, then you just kind of let him go, because you're slowing each other down, and it doesn't help, because for us, it's like, okay, if Tyler's faster than me, say we're running second and third, I'm second, he's third, he's faster than me, I'm not really catching the leader. Well, then I give him a chance to go catch the leader, slow them both down, then I can maybe pass both of them. So there's kind of some strategy for that, but there's nothing over the radio that's ever been discussed of, hey, let Bubba win or let Tyler win, let him around, do that stuff. So I find that stuff interesting.
So you never get the F1 calls like Bubba's faster than you. Yeah, make sure you pull over.
I mean, if Bubba's running me down and I'm not going anywhere, there's no point in holding him up, you know. If he can get up there and battle other cars, like he said, that's potentially going to allow me to advance my position.
In a way, that's lovely, but also quite disappointing. But
I mean, some teammates in this garage, yeah, absolutely. When their teammate runs them down, they're not cutting them any breaks. You see it quite a bit in this garage, actually. And I think that's why we try to, you know, do a good job with it, because you look at a lot of these teammates in this garage, and I feel like some of them do a disservice to their own team.
So which ones would those be, as I look at the director of comms? I'm guessing you're not allowed to say.
I feel like the Hendrick guys race each other pretty hard.
They do. Hendrick guys race each other really, really hard, so there's no giving up there.
But what are the rules of engagement generally with contact? You hear rubbing is racing. Is that fair?
There's three sides of the story in NASCAR: his fault, your fault, and the truth.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I'd say you can typically, they let the drivers handle it for the most part, unless, I mean, you like right hook somebody by getting, you know, we've seen people all the time run into someone's door or run into their bumper, spin them out. I think they draw the line pretty severely when another car right hooks another car.
So like hit the right bumper and spin them. No, that's allowed.
No, they let that stuff go.
That slides. That tracks. So, you know, as drivers, do you find yourself getting, you know, on the wrong side of that thing more often than not, or do you kind of go, that guy spun me around, so I kind of owe him one? You know, how part of the culture of it is it?
Drivers have a memory. They got a memory. They don't forget things. That's for sure.
It's so hard. A lot of it's racing deals. A lot of it's just like you met at a point and you both crashed, right? Who to blame? Talk about it, be pissed off about it, but whatever. But it's the stuff that where you know it's avoidable, like that's when the conversations need to be had.
Yeah, and the stewards are generally let them race unless things are starting to go wrong. They let it go.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah, you can go out if you want to wreck 10 cars. Go out. You're gonna be have a line of people waiting to kick your ass after the race, but
yeah. So as long as if you can run fast, then you
or hide in the crowd.
Yeah.
How come Tyler pitted 3 laps from the end and then just ran?
Yes.
So there's that. I think from our point of view, all we tend to see in Europe from the ovals is from NASCAR is the ovals. But I didn't realize how many different types of ovals there are. So you got the mega ones where you basically unhook the brakes, then maybe short course tracks like this, and then road courses. Do you guys have a preference for which kind of track you have over the course of a season?
I'm kind of like torn between the 1.5 miles and the road courses, but I think I've almost.
What's that in kilometers? Sorry.
Longer? Yeah, I don't know.
So 1.5 miles is long, like the big ones, like Daytona.
No, that's 2.5 miles.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you like the ones where you have to be on the inputs a bit more, braking into corners, stuff like that?
Got the speed, the sensation of speed's there. I like those a lot. But I think I've one more race on road courses, so I probably should give that a mention too.
So Steve was telling us there's a lot of evolution. When the road courses first came in, there'd be ringers coming in so that would specialize and sort of bully the guys a little bit. Do you feel like you're more used to the road courses now?
I would say so. I think ringers are, that's played out now. The ringers can't come in and compete. Just because now we show up, we only get 20 minutes practice. So for us, that's normal, but you have somebody that hasn't been in a car in over a year, right? Things are always changing and evolving, and it makes it even harder for them. And then the competition's so close now, right? I mean, you look at from qualifying, I think Tyler in the 6 car were the only one in the 90s, and everyone else was like a
flat
001, 002, you know, it's just like, holy cow. So it's really close. So you have to be on it. And I think, say, 10 years ago when the ringers were in, they could lay down some blistering laps, right?
Yeah.
But not so much anymore.
I think the things that they could do with the race cars as we've moved into the next gen car, they're just things we kind of picked up on more easily from day one.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw what Shane did at the street course, and I think that's a situation where if we go to like, you know, something we haven't ran before, like a street course, or, you know, we're all starting from scratch, you know, I think that's where you could still see the ringers come in and use their expertise to put on performance like Shane did. But the more street courses we run, and hopefully we run more, I don't know if he wants to hear that, but the more street courses we run, the better we'll get at it, and that, you know, that experience gap will close up.
Okay, well, I wanted to ask, because I was speaking with one of your tire guys earlier, and that is very on brand.
Bothering the tire guys a lot.
Because tires are the most important part of the car and responsible for a lot of your lap time. You changed tire sizes not too long ago to larger tires with shorter sidewalls. How has that affected your feel of the car and the racing? And are you a fan of it or not?
It's changed it a lot, but it's hard to break up all the differences because the car also changed with it.
Yeah.
From the aspect of the tire being wider, I was probably not a fan of that because we go to a lot of tracks where the tires don't wear out like they used to.
Yeah.
But I think having the shorter sidewall makes the cars more difficult to drive. And while some probably hate that, I feel like if we go to places like this and we have the tire where that sidewall is still manageable to drive and you can go past the peak and hang on to it. But the old tire was just so narrow with that taller sidewall that, you know, it would wear out really fast and you could slide it around so much because the sidewall would give so much.
And someone said you preferred that type of tire.
Yeah, tires have been a hot topic of discussion for the last at least 3 years in this car, right? Just trying to figure out what we need. But yeah, I think last year's or previous generation tires were a little bit better for sure.
Got some quick fire questions from our listeners. Bear in mind they know nothing about NASCAR. So Justin would like to know, after Kimi and Jensen, what's the next F1 driver that you'd like to see take a crack at NASCAR?
Lewis for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think he'd do it?
I think we're united
Yeah.
there.
You think he'd do it?
I think he would.
He's already been at Tony Stewart's car.
Yeah, it was raining and he was putting around there. Yeah, no.
Oh, I see. Fair enough. I did see that one. Michael Holler asks, Cars or Talladega Nights? Yeah, the cartoon Cars or Talladega Nights, the movie.
Until my kid gets older, I'm going to go with Cars. So I'm not comfortable with him watching Talladega Nights yet.
That's good.
I was in Cars 3, so I got to say Cars.
Bubba, Tyler, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for speaking to Missed Apex.
Thank you.
right.
Appreciate it. Thank you, brother. Yeah, man.
Oh my goodness. Weren't they open and honest and friendly? Not at all guarded, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, this to me was one of the biggest contrasts, is just how they will just answer a question.
And when he said they let you get away with turning someone around, you know, they were talking about that kind of edging someone around and spinning them into
right
the wall.
hook, yeah.
The right hook. And he goes, nah, they let that go. On the way out, someone whispered to me, he just served the race ban for doing that to someone. So that's why he was saying that. But yeah, they were really kind of unguarded, and we don't seem to see those kind of interviews day to day with F1 drivers. So, and the whole atmosphere in general around the teams and the drivers and access, it was far, far more relaxed. You know, it seemed like all the drivers were much less uptight. So I don't know whether they're under less pressure to be very corporate.
I think maybe that's it. But then also, I think perhaps there is an emphasis on being friendly with the fans and being, you know, because we saw Tyler walking to and from the race, signing autographs and talking to people as he's going to climb into the car and go do this incredibly long, challenging race. Darlington is that for a lot of different reasons. So I think it's fundamental to how the sport was conceived, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so obviously look on the F1 grid and you might have some guys doing the reflex thing with the tennis ball. There's other people meditating. You know, it's super like serious and this is tense. This is game day. Whereas with NASCAR, it's very much, you know, watch this golf swing. Yeah, hits a ball into the stands, then hops into the car. So the atmosphere was really, really different. But I think the 2311 team themselves seemed to just have that real kind of bubbly, friendly atmosphere. I kept feeling like a fish out of water. Like they were all treating us like we were supposed to be just milling around the motorhome of a top team. And it took a while to get rid of the imposter syndrome, but they were all just so welcoming and open. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and maybe it's just also the nature of the series that a lot of the technical stuff is more specified. It's more of a spec series. It's not 100% a spec series. But even, I don't think they're telling us all of their secrets, but they are very comfortable having outsiders around and just, you know what it is? They're very excited to show you their sport and what they love about it.
So when I was at the Airspeed factory on the Friday, I got a tour there. The simplicity of the driver interface was really stark. So they brought me into a storeroom and I was having a look around at some of the parts there, and I saw a steering wheel and I picked it up. And I was like, did the whole kid thing of going like, meow, with the steering wheel. And I got to, no, please put that down. And I had thought that it was some kind of mock-up dummy wheel because it was so simple and basic. And they're like, no, that's like the race wheel. And it's got one button on it. Unless I missed another button, it had one button, which is the torque button.
Are you the reason Tyler crashed?
Oh, no,
my God.
Don't. I still can't get over it. So, look, the team was in really, really good shape. And because we were so embedded in the team, like massive shout out to Davis, their comms director. He's like their Bradley Lord. But basically, everywhere he went with the drivers, behind the scenes, at the driver announcements, he was like, "No, come with us, come to this meeting." I couldn't believe it. He was just going, "Nah, just tag along. We're okay." But we were right in the heart of the team. So we felt all through the weekend how they were shaping themselves up in practice, got themselves on pole, were very calm, no celebration, all the way to the point where they knew they had a massive shot to win that, I was going to say Grand Prix, NAS Prix, I don't know what it's called, event, race. They were going to win the race. And then unfortunately, Tyler there, you were talking about how much they wanted it, about the racing rules, about the rubbing is racing. Unfortunately, seemed to go a little bit low on the apron, made a bit of an optimistic move, realised it was too optimistic, tried to bail out of it, but then ended up understeering high and wiping out the guy in first place, and they both got a burst tyre and they were out. But you see the way the team dealt with that. There was a moment of rage, so you could see the pit crew. Some tyres and equipment went flying, because the pit crew had done an amazing job putting Tyler in that position under the final caution car. But then, very professional, straight back down. Yeah, they're dealing with it, get everything packed up. I was just so impressed with the team when they were winning, and equally impressed when they were losing.
Yeah, and I think we'll hear more about that in the interviews to come, but that is life. If you are a NASCAR racer, you are going to lose a lot more than you win, so you better learn to deal with it.
Yeah, there's no Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton style domination going on there. But I did, I spoke to one of the pit crew guys afterwards, and I just said, "Hey mate, just wanted to say, like, great job on that final stop, getting out in front." And he went, "Huh." And he went to sort of storm off, and then he instantly caught himself, and he turned around and he said, "Do you know what, man? That means a lot." And he was just like, but in that, the emotions are so high in that moment. And even, speaking to Steve Lauletta, who I feel like he wanted to show us this victory as much as, obviously he wants the team to win more than anything. But I just felt he was so proud that they were doing so well all weekend. And then you see, when that moment doesn't come, when it feels like it was going to come, it was a very stoic kind of, well, that's racing, that happens. But you're seeing everybody have their professional front, and you can see everything simmering, that disappointment, that it was so crushing.
I hope Tyler won't take this the wrong way, but I saw him after the race.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wanted to go give him a hug. Because, oh man, like I know that feeling of letting everybody down, but while you make your very best effort to, and it is just soul crushing.
He could equally have been too passive and not got that win as well. He went for it, said he wanted it really badly. And then there was, and then the NASCAR drivers, they really confront each other afterwards, and there's cameras on them. It's just, the whole affair is way more raw and less guarded.
Yeah, I actually got kind of irritated because I didn't understand it at the time, but those two cars in the front, the one guy that kept on blocking Tyler was actually on the same team as the other guy he wound up crashing into. So like they set that up essentially as a trap for him. They kept the guy in front essentially blocked him to the point where the guy behind could get round. And then he had to try and catch him. And with whatever tires he had left, and remember, Darlington is just a tire munchin' festival, try and make that pass. And he clearly had the faster car. By loads, he had the faster car. It was just the tiniest of misjudgments. Oh, God, it still hurts.
So you can tell, listeners, that we were very much entertained. So I had no idea I would be that entertained. I was actually set up to pretend that I was more entertained than I was. Do you know what I mean? That was going into it. I was like, well, how exciting can it be? And then, so going into following it all unfold, watching the Xfinity, which is like a Formula 2 of NASCAR, but not an awful lot slower. So watching those tactics evolve and then watching the main day over the course of 3 separate sprint stages. And I also thought, these races are 3 hours long. I'm going to be bored. So I'd kind of set myself up to politely go, oh, no, that was brilliant. But the way it works out as an event, you kind of, you pick a point in sprint 2 or stage 2. And I just went and got some chicken. I think I might have had a taco. I don't know. But it was ribs. Yeah. It was ribs. There we go. Had some ribs and had a bit of a walk around, walked back. And I know I'm not exactly selling it by saying, well, I didn't miss too much. Like I didn't miss the critical part, but it was not a nap sport, but it was enough to kind of, be in and out. And then you hunker down, settle down for the final stage. And it was a dramatic, climactic. You could see the tactics unfolding. The things that the teams had been doing in the previous stages paid off. So there was payoff to a lot of the tactical stuff. And and we'll hear the strategy from their strategist, JR. It was way, way, way more complex than I ever dreamed it would be.
It is because of the stage nature of it. You can play the very long game for the ultimate win of the race, or you can play the short game for each stage, or you can, if you've only got one shot, you can pick a stage and try and position yourself to have the best shot at winning that one stage. So there's a lot of teams with different aims, and all of their strategies are going to connect and play off of each other. It's really, there's a lot more to it than just turning left.
Well, and the undercut and the overcut are far more crucial in NASCAR. And also, you could see teams, maybe they save their tactics or they don't worry in the early stage because they don't want to show their hand particularly. But honestly, I would convert to this stage racing when you see races like Imola and Monaco, where like Monaco, nothing happened for 50 laps. And then the only thing that really happened was the 7th, 6th and 5th pitted and stayed in the same order. And then nothing continued to happen all the way to the end. You go, wow. For Monaco, everybody's now accepting. I have noticed this. They've gone from, no, you're watching it wrong, don't be stupid, it is good actually. That level of defense has gone now. And everyone's like, no, we know it was rubbish. We should do something to change it, but it has to stay because of the history or something. But really, get inventive with ideas like stage racing. Don't be afraid to do something like that, because that NASCAR race would have been kind of silly if they just started and then gone, and it would have been silly if they just threw out cautions for the sake of it, which is genuinely what I thought they did. That was my perception from the outside. But no, it's a structured thing. You get points after the first competition caution, but it's not that. It's the end of stage. You get some points there, then some points at the end of stage 2, and then they have the main points at the end of stage 3. And each of those, you have an opportunity to either cash in with your place or try and pit early to give up the stage, but give yourself a tyre advantage. There's like so much going on. I think JR, their strategist, does explain that. So would now be a good time to go into the strategist interview we had. And I will say this is on the Friday pre-Darlington, and I vowed in the interview that I would catch up with him on Sunday. But after the result, we waved at everyone from afar and just didn't want to bother anyone because they were all just dealing with it. So I'm in the belly of 2311, and we are here talking to strategist JR, just goes like Cher, just one name, JR.
JR, two letters, one name.
At just 29 years old, in charge of all the strategy here for the team. Is that a lot of pressure?
Sometimes it can be. A lot of really experienced people, the crew chiefs and people in the team are relying on some of the information that I'm giving them. So it can definitely be stressful.
And this is back at the facility during race day in the
No,
war
I actually
room.
travel.
You're there with them,
Yep.
so you're in the ear of the crew chief saying,
Yep.
those tires ain't gonna last.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So during the week, I work on looking at stuff in the past and like trying to figure out what to expect, try and predict the race. And then on race day, because we have 2 pit boxes, I sit on the 23 pit box with Bubba Wallace's crew chief, Booty Barker. And then I'm talking directly to Booty. I'm looking at my information, trying to give him the best information I can. And then during the week, I did all that work. We meet. I talk to all the engineers, all the crew chiefs, basically say, here's what I expect for the
You've
weekend.
got a baseline.
Yep. Here's what to expect for the weekend. Try and make everybody as smart as I can, or at least give them all the information I have, so that when a situation comes up on the racetrack, I don't have to be on the other pit box to basically influence their decision, because hopefully the work that I did during the week.
So don't worry, this is coming out after Darlington. So whatever you tell me here, the other teams won't get a heads up.
That's good.
But I was hearing from Wheels, from Mike Wheeler there, that obviously you've got higher tyre wear here at Darlington, so a few more pit stops than expected. So how do you feed that into the weekend then? So you've got a plan. Do you identify laps where you think they're going to come in and you have to go, right, but if caution, if no caution?
Yep, 100%. So Darlington's super unique, has super high degradation. Darlington's super unique, has super high degradation. So one thing, for example, is we can go 75 laps on fuel. Well, any other racetrack, it's always faster to run out of gas. Like, you don't have to stop. So like in an F1 race, you just stop for tires because the fuel makes it all the way to the end, right? But if it was faster, all the teams would just leave one set of hards on and run all the way to the end of the race, right? And they have in the past. But what we have at most tracks is that, where we just pit at the end of our fuel window, or at the beginning of the fuel window.
Oh, so the fuel drives the tyre wear.
A lot of times.
Right, okay.
But
But
at
you
Darlington,
won't get that luxury.
At Darlington, the tires are more important than the fuel. So over a fuel run, it's faster to stop one time by like a lot. So you'll see a lot more pit stops, because now instead of this, we're just going to stop somewhere in the middle because we can't make it on fuel. Now we're going to stop because it's faster on the tire wear to make it to the end.
So on most tracks, you could probably time it around if a caution comes out or you get to the end of a stage.
Yep.
You can tell I'm F1,
Oh, yeah.
I'm translating to NASCAR
exactly.
in my head. But here you're going to have to risk pitting under green. So that's kind of a big deal. What you get in F1 sometimes is people tire saving to goal hang for a safety car or for a caution. Do you have that same kind of equation? Because Mike was saying the undercut is usually 3 seconds a lap.
Yep. So at Darlington this weekend, because the wear is so high, it's really hard for somebody to try call it the overcut.
Yeah.
The run really far.
Yeah, the goal hang for a safety
and
car.
There's so much time loss that you really have to be taking like a Hail Mary to make that work at a place like Darlington. But at a lot of racetracks, you see a pit stop happen. Say if the stage is 100 laps and they stop around halfway, some cars will go 20 laps further, just hoping for that chance of something that happens.
So how much can the drivers influence tyre wear? So my knowledge of tyre wear in NASCAR is exclusively Days of Thunder. So I know you can put special tyres on at the end. But can you say to the guys, like, we need this set to go longer here? Can you ease off?
Yep. So a lot of times so say that stage is 100 laps and say the mathematical perfect pit stop is at 50. Well, the drivers know that we don't like pitting at mathematical perfect. We like undercutting people. So
you like to undercut. So that's the instinct, is always let's undercut.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a point where if you do it too far ahead, then that other car can go to mathematical best lap to pit and pass you way late in the run.
So you're vulnerable later in that stage.
But with NASCAR, we have a lot of cautions.
Yeah.
So we want to pit. We almost want to say, okay, if there's going to be a caution somewhere, say 70, 80 laps into the run, we want to basically split 70 to 80 laps, not 100 laps, because we want to be ahead at the point of caution. So we'll undercut. So what that means is that we'll pit at 35, 40. Well, now the driver has to go 55, 60 laps on tires rather than the 50. So that first run, he can usually push really hard, basically use all the tire up. But if he does that again, we're going to be on the back end of the run, 20 laps, we're just going to fall off. Yep.
Well, isn't it massively dangerous to have a 3-second delta on such a short lap?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Good. So no one's shying away from that. That's a known thing.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm going that seems.
Pitting under green is tough, and that's one of the toughest things in our sport is when you pit under green. So you'll lose 42 seconds at Darlington. Yeah, you'll be a lap and more. You'll be a lap and a half, a lap and a quarter back. So a lap time is 32 seconds or so, and we lose 42 seconds on pit road. So it's at a place like Darlington, if you undercut and somebody has an issue, you're stuck a lap down for a period of.
What does that mean if someone has an issue?
So, I mean, something as simple as a tire coming off, or spinning out coming to pit road, or.
And when there's a caution, do they block the pits, or people can come in?
So the moment the yellow comes out, they close the pits.
Because that leads to a lot of silliness in F1, when basically everyone's waiting for their cheap pit stop, but you don't get a cheap pit stop here.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yep. There is no cheap pit stop. Whenever we have a situation where like you run long and the caution comes out because you're that car that was hanging for the safety car hoping for the yellow, your cheap pit stop is kind of the fact that you are trapping other cars one lap down. Right. So when you pit, they get their lap back, but you still get to come out in front of them because they had to wave around or come back around the safety car and line up at the back, whereas when you pit, you just come back out where you were running.
So tell me about the importance of the toe and aero and running in the pack. So from the outside, it can seem a little bit, well, what's the point in trying until the end? So when do you run in the pack and when do you not?
So that only really happens at Talladega, Daytona, and Atlanta, where they pack race like that. So at those places, it's all like fuel saving.
Like a peloton in cycling.
Yep. And it's burning energy and it's saving fuel to when you come and do a pit stop. Usually we do 10-second pit stops, 9-second pit stops. Well, at those places, the tire wear doesn't matter at all because the toe is way more important than anything else. So you just want to be ahead of everybody else. You want to be at the front of the DRS train. So you want to take less fuel than anybody else.
Thanks for making that easy for me to understand.
So you want to take less fuel. So when you come in for a pit stop, you can make a 2-second stop instead of a 3-second stop. So you can
physically, the less fuel you use, the less time you take to then top up. So like, are they like the big ticket events? Because that seems to be what I see when I imagine NASCAR. I imagine those big packs.
And those are the ones that all the cars are right next to each other. The crashes are huge. The replays are everywhere, right? And the finishes are always extremely close, usually. But a place like Darlington, it becomes way more of dirty air is more important than the toe. So being in the wake, just like an F1 car, when we talk about high-speed corners at like a Saudi Arabia, if a car is like right up on another car in a high-speed corner, well, that high-speed corner is probably 150, 160 mile an hour corner.
Yeah, it's like turn 3 at Barcelona. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's probably 100 to 150 mile per hour corner where the car is just really loaded, and if there's another car in front of it, it's just going to wash out of the wake. Well, at Darlington, our center corner speed is between 150 and 130 miles an hour. So just being behind that car in front, and we're behind a school bus.
Right.
And we're behind a school bus instead of a...
So you get all your aeros gone.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
And we make so little to begin with. Every pound of downforce that we lose is just a bigger percentage of it.
So at Darlington on Sunday, I'm not going to see the big packs at all. You're going to actually finding a bit of clean air. So as the strategist, and you've got to pit under green, are you doing maths of going, right, 40 seconds pit road plus this, right, that's going to put him out in clean air, which means we'll have a better stint.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Because at times the undercut can be more important. So just like in F1, if you come out behind a car, not only are you slower, but you're also going to degrade your tires more because you have less grip, so you're using the tires more. So the undercut into traffic is like the worst thing you can
Death.
do.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got really important for you. So that's big maths because you're having to calculate a lap and a half's worth of events.
Where you're going to end up, exactly.
And then so if they come out in clean air, no one says anything. But if they come out behind 2 or 3 cars, they're like, JR, you turn it. Yeah. And you get the blame. And you get the blame.
And this past weekend at Kansas, one of our tools didn't read exactly as it was supposed to. And we thought we were going to, we actually overcut it at Kansas this past weekend. We ran long up until a point where we kind of fell into a gap that we thought we were going to end up in. And when we pitted, we came out right behind 2 cars. And it's not totally detrimental because you have 6-7 lap pressure tires and you can pass them, but it's like you didn't get that. You didn't get the goodie, that first out lap that's really good. So
on a slightly personal note to end, obviously what you do really affects the drivers, and I'm sure as they're getting lifted up into the air and there's champagne and you're just in the corner going, they don't even know that was all me. What's your relationship with the drivers? Do you have how's your meetings beforehand, and do they accept your plan, your L plan?
I think one of the most important things for us is the driver trust. So like if we decide we're going to overcut, that's like the hardest thing to convince a driver is like, because everybody's peeling off out of in front of them, right? And you're just slow and getting passed by cars. You're hoping it pays off. And those 5 laps are the most crucial for any strategy like that to work. Well, those 5 laps, if the driver doesn't believe in what you're doing, he's not going to try as hard. Or if he trusts you and he's like, I'm going to make this work, that bond of like, we're going to make this work together, versus like, if everybody starts peeling off and he becomes discouraged and thinks that we don't know what we're doing, it's very much likely to fail. So it's my relationship with the driver. I also do some other stuff with like driver coaching and how to drive the car. So all of that kind of combines into he has to trust me, or my job isn't going to basically see any results.
Okay, so this could go really wrong, but I think I'm with you guys on Sunday. I think I'm going to be in the garage. Okay, so you'll be not too far away.
Yep.
I'll try and grab you at some point afterwards to see if your answer to this question was correct. But do you think you're on top of it for Darlington strategy? You've got a clear plan. Do you think you've got something up your sleeve that the other strategists don't have?
I think so. I think that we've learned a lot in the last year, and hopefully we can implement something. It's really hard to be different. I was watching the Braun documentary, and Braun said something like, strategy doesn't win you races, but it can sure as hell lose you races.
What a great job you have.
and that's the thing, is like strategy very rarely is like the knock out of the park race winning thing. Usually just like being in the mix, staying in the mix, and letting the race car drivers do race car driver things and win the race.
Oh yeah, I forgot the race drivers have something to do with it as well. we all this chat.
Yep.
Yeah. Brilliant. I can't wait to find out if that tracks on Sunday. JR, thank you so much for talking to the Apex podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, it's fair to say, Matt, that during the course of the weekend, you and JR clicked. You got on very well. And as I was saying in the intro, Sunday, when he's putting together the potentially race-winning strategy, well, it was the race-winning strategy. It was a good enough strategy to win. I had a tap on my shoulder going, JR really needs to get on with his work. Can you kind of tell Matt? And I'm like, Matt, JR, you've got to split. And you're like, one more. You're like a kid at a playground. Like, 5 more minutes, Mum. I just want to go on the swing one more time. But you were both like that. And there's me and Steve, the parents, kind of going, no, we've got to go home. We've got ice cream at home.
To be fair, it's not that bad. I have an invitation to come back, so we didn't totally ruin everything with that. But from my point of view, we've just interviewed the drivers. I get to talk to JR for the first time all weekend because apparently Alanis King warned him about me. And we had some fun on the interview. But we meet and he's like, oh, there's this secret room in the hauler. Come up here and let me show you all of my toys. Yes. And he was in the midst of showing me how they did the race projections, like he was showing me exactly how it all worked. And I had so many questions, and he was super excited that I had all these questions. I mean, it was, it's that moment. It's like when I met Summers for the first time, it was just like all over, It's just like, oh, no. Yeah, here's someone simpatico.
JR was so generous with his time and so generous to share that information. And I was surprised, like, I guess I get why this shows my level of prejudice going in, but the lap analysis and the strategy analysis, the way they do it was remarkably complex. And if you remember, Matt, an F1 team person just completely illegally shared with us the strategy tools that they were using.
Nope. I don't know what you're talking about. That never happened according to our lawyers.
It happened, and it was really cool. We're like, oh my goodness, this is like way more in depth than I thought. But the NASCAR one was, complicated again, because at Darlington there was like 6 pit stops during the course of that time, and every time you're having to track this overcut, undercut, tire wear. Normally you'd have to deal with fuel, but they didn't. It was simple for the fuel in this one, but yeah, remarkably complex, and they were very very generous in showing us it and talking us through what they were doing.
Yeah, and I do hope I get to go back because after that interview, I find I have about 37 multi-part questions that now need answering from JR. So you're on notice, buddy. I'm coming back and I'm hunting you down.
Well, they're F1 fans too. So yeah, JR's a big F1 fan. So why don't we reach out and see if you would want to do a Missed Apex podcast F1-y type thing as well?
That would be really super duper fun and awesome.
Yeah, I know he follows the strategy side of Formula One as well. But once again, I think from the outside as F1 fans, we wouldn't assume that level of complexity. Now I'm desperate to see other types of races, and I've not had the opportunity to sit down yet because and watch another race. So this was sort of almost like their Monaco, where it was very, very hard to pass, maybe more like an Imola. So we saw this strategic battle at the lower end of how possible it was to overtake, and they were the most on rails with the strategy. So I haven't had a chance to ever watch something a bit more peloton-like. So they have the 2.5 mile tracks, as the drivers were saying, which are a lot of more saving and tactical. I'm not sure how thrilling that would be, but it seems to be working for Formula E at the moment. And then what's the other type? The short track. Where they have to brake a little bit into the corners. And then they have the road circuits as well.
Come to Watkins Glen.
They go to Watkins Glen. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I think they race. Come to New York and we'll drive up to Watkins Glen.
Okay, I didn't know Watkins Glen was near you.
About
I never knew
4
that.
or 5 hours, but yes, it's in Western New York.
That's so American. Yeah, it's just around the corner. 4 or 5 hours and we're there.
It's a drivable distance. That's what I'm saying.
So what piqued your curiosity from the strategy's point of view?
The biggest thing I would want to know, I mean, like I said, I had 37, but the interest to me is in understanding tire wear. Well, I had, okay, deep breath, calm down. Tire wear as related to the amount of fuel you carry, because fuel is weight and weight affects tire wear. And the way the stages are designed, you don't ever quite have enough fuel to get to the end of the stage. I think that's my memory.
Except at Darlington where you did. But yeah, that's an outlier, I think.
So the curiosity is when you're thinking about your strategy, the less fuel you put in, the shorter your pit stop is. But the lighter the car is, the longer the tires will go and the more you can take out of them, I presume. So I would call it the arbitrage between those two variables. How do they work that out? And do they use like driver in the loop sims to do this kind of stuff? Do they calculate out the physics on their own? They're just like so many questions about how they come up with sort of like these optimum points and then figuring out around it where their best strategy is going to be.
Now, one of the things that was great for us on race day was we were plumbed in to the whole team's comms. And so I know most of the time, right, we were just following Davis around. And as we said, like, so generous of him I don't know how risky it was for him, but it did seem like it was a bit, oh yeah, no, just come into this meeting here. Just come and sit in on this. Yeah, just stand behind the fireworks of the driver's parade. Which, by the way, the driver introductions, F1 needs to do that. F1 needs to get its stick out of its sofa
backside
cushions. Sofa cushions And just accept that these guys are superstars. The driver introductions were absolutely incredible, except for the fact that we were way too close to the pyrotechnics, thanks to Davis, and I was actually sweating by the end.
You could feel the heat.
Yeah, from the actual fire, but they'd be like, oh, and from 23XL, Tyler Reddick! And he's there with one kid that's his kid, and then like another kid's getting involved, and then the fireworks go off, and they're signing caps or throwing things into the crowd, and drivers kind of got their own moment to do a thing. So one of them did like a little dance or whatever. One of them was like super pump it up. And then there was one guy he had a nickname like Interesting Dave or whatever. I can't remember now. But it was
Mr. Personality or something like that.
And then he just did the most boring walk you could possibly muster and just nodded at the crowd and walked past. But all that stuff, amazing.
And props to the DJ who picked different tunes for them all, and props to the MC who knew them well enough to make little jokes like that and get on with them. I mean, like, the drivers bought into it as well, and and it made it fun for everybody.
And the thing I kept saying when people were surprised at how taken away I was by certain things in NASCAR, the thing I was saying to the team is, you Americans, you have fun out loud and on purpose. And the Europeans, especially the Brits, we feel like we have to accidentally have fun. And we can be like, well, we weren't trying to have fun, of course, but I suppose it was mildly entertaining in the course of our serious endeavors. Whereas Americans just go, yay, the thing, woohoo, and they cheer and they whoop. And I don't know, I preferred it, and I think we could use that like a little bit. I know I'm not generalizing. Not all of Europe is like that, but France is. I couldn't imagine France doing that. They're worse than us.
Yeah, we better not get onto France, or else we'll be here forever.
I don't think we have any French listeners, so I think we're okay. But the Americans have fun out loud. NASCAR have fun out loud. The fans are just in the pit lane, just all the time. If you've got the right access, so I'm sure you pay a bit more for those tickets, but there were fans up and down the pit lane, could take photos, could go like, hey, dude, to the team boss or the strategist or whatever. And it was far more open. And the paddock, which is like mega exclusive in F1, just had fans everywhere, milling about, inches from the cars. And in fact, we were in the pit lane during qualifying, and cars were just pulling up. I was in like a parking spot for whoever finished fifth or whatever. The driver just turned in, hesitated slightly because I was in the wrong place, but then just drove right towards me and stopped half a meter in front. And I was like, all right. Like, it's way more chill. I'm assuming people have got hurt in the past doing that, but the level of access and just the level of fun and, do you know why we do this? It's because we're supposed to be enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, it is entertainment at the end of the day, and it is sports at the end of the day, and the proportions they have are pretty spectacular. And if you're in the U.S., it is, I will say, a lot more affordable. You could, for I think the cost of my wife and I going to the Formula One in Miami, you could have that infield all-access pass at a NASCAR weekend. Yeah.
I remember I tangented myself away, but what I was going to say was we were mostly kind of in the crew areas, but for the race, Steve was like, go up to the VIP bit. I couldn't believe it. So you've got the booth over the top. So in F1 where you've got the clueless people at the back of the garage that have got the headphones on, you go, how have they got that? They don't even seem to know anything. That was us, and we got that.
It was.
Oh, it was so good. And it had shade, which was amazing because it was a very hot day. But we could really feel all the communications and the way the race was unfolding. It was crazy.
Yeah, and I love that, like, the president of the team is like, psst, psst, come down here. And he's, look at what they do to the tires. And he like dragged me down so I could see how they look for tire wear after a stint, how they measure it, and how that information goes back to the crew chief and to the strategist, so they can they have more firm data to make their next projection with.
And actually, one of the nicest chats we had on the Sunday, just hanging out, we had about half an hour just hanging out with the two tyre guys, one from each pit crew. Matt was in heaven. They were very nice guys.
Well, one of them was Bubba's, and we got introduced to him later, but Frankie was Tyler's guy. And that's who I got to meet first.
But you can imagine Matt in heaven with the 2 tire guys from the pit crew, and then actually being centimeters away from them while they were doing their in-race checks on the tires, and then feeding that information back to the strategist.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. They use a mechanism that's a lot like the rollers I used to train on as a bicyclist. They set all 4 tires up, and then they have to shave off all the stuff that's gotten picked up and look for they have wear dots, and then they have pieces of tape where they're supposed to measure stuff. It's very, very cool and incredibly important, I found out.
We tangented again, but hearing all the comms and hearing the relationship between the crew chief and the driver, fascinating. So our next interview is with an ex-crew chief, but he is now their team manager. He basically is the sergeant major of the team. It's a guy called Mike Wheeler, Wheels, and the beating heart, really, certainly in like a logistics and human way. And then he runs the operation room back at the facility, which feeds information there during the race. So we did talk a little bit about that in this interview, but I was fascinated about his experience as that crew chief, because what we saw during the race was earlier on, Tyler hit a wall. And I think it turned out that there was no real damage to the car, but there was a moment where, well, I've hit a wall, I've messed up, I've damaged my car, I've got a race-winning car, and I've gone and wrecked it. And then just hearing the process of the crew chief going, well, we're looking at the data, we're seeing what you're able to do. It doesn't look like there's any damage, but in any case, even if there is, for now, just keep driving, see what you can do, and then no, we're okay. And I don't know whether there was damage in the end, but he was definitely pumping Tyler with, your car's like fine, and if the crash might have made it better actually, and you've now got a unicorn and a rainbow following you behind, pushing you to victory on a magic tornado. But so that's what I was speaking to Mike about, as well as some of the logistics and tactical stuff back at the factory. So I get to move up the rankings here at 2311, and now we're into the heart of management as I'm joined by Mike Wheeler. Mike, what would you describe your role as here?
My role is overseeing anything from budgets to the building, and being just a senior leader here on the competition side.
Okay, so you're driving a desk now. You're like that fighter pilot that's taken down so many enemy that you've been parked at a desk because
That's fair.
It's so good.
That's fair.
Yeah. But in the olden days, when you were Maverick and you were on the pit wall, I'd like to know a little bit about who you were pit crewing for. So that magical driver-engineer relationship.
Yeah, so I spent about 10 years as a race engineer for Denny Hamlin, and then I was his crew chief for a handful of years for him, Matt DiBenedetto, and Bubba Wallace as crew chief, and did a couple years as comp director as well.
So with Formula One, yes, we hear from the likes of Bono and Xavi. We are checking Hammer Time, Lewis, but I think a lot more of the single seater time is them against the corners. Whereas it feels like in NASCAR, it's more symbiotic. You're the voice in his head around the track.
For sure, there's a lot more coaching and motivation going on. I would say it's an emotional connection with the drivers, between crew chiefs and drivers, that you have to keep their head in the game when they're down. But obviously keep them aware of the situations around them for racing in NASCAR.
I love that motivational side. Does that translate off track? So if a crew chief and driver aren't getting on well, does Steve come in and go, you guys got to go and get some beers or get the boxing gloves on?
I've never had that conversation. I've always made sure I had good standings with my drivers. Fortunately, they saw I worked hard and did a lot of things well. Yes, we had some disagreements in the past, but we always worked through them without having to have the boss step in and tell us go get cookies.
Go get cookies. Now I'm getting the immediate vibe and feel off you that you are absolutely crystal calm and cool until you need to not be. But you've got to have that gear, I suppose.
For sure, racing at least in NASCAR for sure, you end up losing more times than you win. And I think everyone has stories about how many races they should have won in their career, and it's 3 times of what you actually did win. So it's definitely a humbling sport, and you learn to control your emotions during it.
And then they're relying on you for that. So I think one of the challenges, and we're not going to name any names, don't worry, we're being overseen by management here. But what's that process of when a driver is just losing themselves in their head, and you've just got to get them to just drive?
Yeah, most of the time when that happens, we end up with a caution. We end up with a caution and a period of reset to actually calm them down and focus ahead and like, hey, we still have a race to win, or go run top 10 or score the most points you have. So there's usually a chance to hit the reset button and get them back in the game.
And how often, because we spoke to JR earlier from the strategy perspective, I'm wondering about that dynamic. So you've got to relay strategy to a driver, and so I'm learning here, every driver wants the undercut. And so like last weekend when JR's calling for an overcut and you've got to be the one to transmit that to the driver, they have to have a lot of trust in you at that point.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time we try to preface the week with the strategy so that it's not a surprise during the race. Yeah. And most of the time, while they think the driver's so busy during the race, not knowing if they're close enough to undercut or if they have to defend from behind, or how many laps to go in the stage to actually wear their tires out and be in a worse deficit. It is fun to try to motivate the drivers to either undercut the person in front of them, or go long and actually have to work the driver hard to pass them back. Obviously in our series, we end up with a number of cautions that, while you try to play different strategies, you can easily get it thrown out the window when a caution comes out and throws it all in the trash.
Okay, but there must have been times where they've gone, come on, Wheels. We can't pull that off. Why are you making me work this hard?
Most of the time, the drivers actually just do it what you tell them during a race. And it's not until Monday that they actually second guess you and go, that didn't work.
Yeah, and I suppose who's ultimately making those calls? So you've got the driver giving you the feedback on track. You've got the likes of JR with the timesheets. Is it down to the crew chief to go, right, this is the call?
Yeah, the crew chief in our series makes the final call. There's plenty of support people and obviously senior leadership that maybe gives them insight of pluses and minuses, why you should do something. But we allow the crew chief to make the final call.
And that's a lot of pressure. So that's why you now want the corner office.
Yeah, it is a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of rewards with that. Nobody gets 100% right. It's not easy, but we all work together as a team, and obviously some of us have been in that spot before, where it's nobody wants to play Monday morning quarterback, but at the same point, you want to educate everyone to make sure that we make the best calls we can.
So JR's quote was, the strategist isn't going to win the race necessarily, but you could lose it. However, I do feel like in NASCAR, it feels like you've got more voices in the driver's head. So the spotter is such a huge part of that. Do you have to be a spotter before you get promoted to crew chief?
No. I mean, I would tell you, I don't think anybody in NASCAR world has been a spotter that became a crew chief. I would tell you some might have been the other way around. Most spotters are just dedicated spotters in their career. Some have been ex-drivers, honestly, so they actually know what it's like in the car versus seeing it from the spotter stand. But most crew chiefs and engineers nowadays are dedicated that path.
Feels like a lot for the driver to be taken in. Like in F1, we often get the "leave me alone, I know what I'm doing," the famous Kimi Räikkönen quote. Do you ever get the drivers just going, "Dude, guys, shut up," or do you say like, "We can't shut up," or the wheels will come off?
It definitely happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's deserving, but all the crew chiefs want to give them just enough information to educate him during a race, but never give him too much that they get him pissed off. That's not conference inspiring for sure.
And when it's a bad race, like you must get the sense of, because these are superstars as well, and no disrespect to the crew chiefs, but not always named characters. So when it's gone wrong, is there a feeling that I can't talk to Mark today? I best run away before Bubba gets back?
No, I think all of us are mature enough to take it in the face. And you have to be. You have to have thick skin here because you try your best. And I think everyone believes they are the best at what they do, and they should be. They are in that position, but nobody bats at 1,000.
So one of the secrets that I hope I'm not giving away here is the war room during race day. I'm just looking over to check that out. So you've got like 3 banks of people, a massive screen with all the data, some really fancy stuff there that can add to the trackside team's strategy. Can you tell me a bit about that? Like, does every team have that, and what can you add?
I can't say every team has that, but it definitely became more prevalent right around the COVID period. When we started to work from home and have to have less people at the racetrack, we definitely had more amphitheater-style support rooms. We purposely built the one we have, has 16 chairs in it and 4 rows, to be able to give insight to the team at the racetrack. It also gives our younger staff here insight for their knowledge during the week and as they grow, to see what happens at the racetrack firsthand.
So these will be the guys that will eventually be at the track, but they get a bit more of a less pressured environment, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
They get to see the experience at the racetrack outside of what you just see on TV. It's a battle. It's a battle to be in there. You know, a lot of the stuff you hear in the intercom and you see firsthand with the data, there's a lot to take in.
Okay, but are you able to be a little bit hands-off? Because obviously you've got people who are doing what you used to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and you know their job inside and out. It must be tempting just to get involved sometimes.
You know, I always make sure, and I know there's a few of us like that we've been in their shoes, right? But in the war room, it's actually way easier to see the big picture. You don't have the sounds, you don't have the smell, you don't have the interruptions. It's way quieter. And so it's way easier to see the big picture. I don't say it's easier to make decisions. I don't want to say they should be here for that, but it is very easy to make sure that when they're maybe missing something that you should be seeing, to just chime in and say, hey, don't forget about this look of what the problem is.
And they know they can't BS you because you've done everything that they do.
That is correct. We remind them occasionally too.
Can you give me an example of just, some kind of call or change that the war room might have made during a race weekend?
There's been a few times where we've getting in an accident or maybe a minor scuffle and people don't realize we're on the damaged vehicle policy clock. It's in NASCAR, we have 6 minutes if you're on that clock to fix the car and rejoin the race and meet a minimum lap time to come off the DVP. It's one of those things, so they don't want garbage running out there over and over again, running 20 laps down or 100 laps down. You have to maintain pace. You only have so much time. So a lot of times you might have a minor scuffle, you don't even think you're on DVP.
And that's something that the marshals or the stewards will say.
Yeah,
you're on DVP.
It's a website, it's a clock. You may say on the radio, but there is some rulings that go on that can knock you either 2 laps down if you're not careful with a simple penalty, and you're allowed an extra person over the wall with that to try to help the damage. So you just try to help, make sure the team at the racetrack understands when they're on the DVP.
Final question: if one of your regular chiefs, is it called them chiefs? Yeah. If one of them was to call in sick or hurt their leg, could you be tempted to put the headphones on?
Yeah, no, we've discussed it. I said myself and Dave Rogers and a couple of us that have done it before are always going to be readily available for that. It does come with its demand, but at the same point, there's demand here for what we do. We also have, race engineers that are also wanting to go that path in their career, so we're happy to go that direction too.
Thank you so much for your time and good luck at Darlington.
Thank you.
So Matt, this gets me to kind of the back end, the Airspeed facility of 2311. I really wish you'd got to go around there. This is where I spoke to Mike. This is where I spoke to JR. You could, right, if you remember the tales of Ron Dennis and
Yes.
the McLaren garages having to be spotless, you could eat off the floor of the garages in 2311.
I completely believe this. And this is one of these things. It's a new facility. So because they're coming at it with a new car, but because they have people who've been around a long time, they really had the opportunity to think through the best way to set things up for the future rather than being hung up with, we had this facility here for 20 years ago when we did things like this, but we don't do them like that anymore. So it's amazing to me. I always love to go into places like that because they're just so efficient. They don't waste things. And I do love that.
I believe it's been opened up to the public now, but it hadn't been before. So it was a real kind of behind the scenes look. And obviously the race team had already set off for Darlington, but there was a complete spare car there on standby if somebody, wrecked it early on in practice and needed a spare car. And the, down to the angle of the windows was 23 degrees in homage to the 2311 name and car. And the whole building was just set up, not just to be a headquarters for everybody to work, but when you walk in there, you want to open your wallet because you want to get involved in the team. So interesting tidbit, I think from Steve. I think Steve said it on the show, so I hope this isn't a secret. 80% of the revenue is from advertising rather than coming from, say, an FIA prize pot.
That is interesting, but it's also, I think, that's kind of the way the sport has grown to be. And, I can't argue with that, really. It works. You can pick your lane. You can be Joe Gibbs and be the everything and have unlimited resources because you have those kinds of sponsors. Or you can be 2311 and just be massively efficient and only mess with the stuff you need to get where you want to be. And I think they're getting there pretty rapidly, if I'm being honest.
So, they're obviously very proud of it. And I was impressed, blown away, especially from an engineering point of view. My engineering experience is, not that. You could not have eaten off the floor of any of the engineering bays I was working in the early 2000s.
I should probably not tell you about the workshops I was in when I was fixing bicycles. They were nice, but they were not the cleanest of places.
But the whole mentality is we have to, they had shadow boards for everything, which not all race teams and mechanics will have. If you get into aircraft, and I'm sure in F1 you have shadow boards, so everything has its place and every place has its thing. And so I really would love to get the chance to compare it. And I did say, are all NASCAR workshops like this? And they were, no. So I'd love to get the chance to compare it. And my instinct as a workshop engineer at the beginning of my career is how much time, an effort goes into making it like that. And does the advantage of that outweigh the fact that everything's clean, open, and organized? But I think they actually have specialist people whose job it is to make it like that.
And I know we're all about the airspeed here, but especially of the pit crew, who impressed me the most, almost out of anyone we saw.
Yeah, and they are a specialist team. So in F1, it's Derek in HR, Paul in accounts, and they go, okay, and now you're also pit crew. I know, no, it's more the engineering team and the mechanics, but these are specialized pit crew. And so they have a gym area where, their fitness is all based around the strength you need to do these pit stops efficiently, way more physically demanding than Formula One. The pit stops take, I don't know, maybe it looked like 8 or 9 seconds, and they only had a handful of guys. So only maybe 3 were allowed, or maybe 4 or 5, no, 5, I think, 4 on the tyres. So they go to one side, change the tyres, throw the tyres at the pit wall. Someone has to grab them and throw them over. Then they run to the other side, gets jacked up the other way, put the tyres on. All the while, there's a guy with a giant fuel canister with a pipe running down. They just literally hold it up in the air and then dump all the fuel into the fuel tank. And those guys have to be really physically fit and strong. And so you see them doing their pre-race warm-ups, routines, working out, and it's boiling hot. They're in their fire suits. It's a proper physical thing. And that's why when the final incident happened, the guys are full of adrenaline, and it's like, no, we've done it. We've done everything.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I'm gonna share one comms thing, is that the pit stall that they had from pole position, because that's what Tyler had, was a massive advantage at the end of every stage, because they were so close to the line where they measure the order for the start of the next stage. And because it's so hard to pass at Darlington, if you're in the lead at the start, you've got a very good chance, kind of like Monaco, of being able to stay there. If you have a car that's fast enough, obviously with enough delta, you can pass somebody. And they showed time after time, after every pit stop, green flag or yellow flag, those cars and how close they were. And I'd put them, you're under tenths of seconds apart at that line, but they won everyone they needed to give him a chance at the win. And it was incredibly impressive to watch.
It was, yeah. And we have no point of reference, but I was massively impressed just by the whole team, not just their efficiency, not just the calmness, not just the passion. The thing that impressed me the most was just how nice and friendly everybody was. And I don't know why that surprised me. I thought it would be a bit more like gung-ho, like, yeah, you've got to do this, and we've all got blood pouring out of our arms, but we don't care because this is NASCAR, and shut up, you. But it wasn't. It was just really it was all about just doing the work, getting down, doing the work, doing it in the right way, in the nicest way. And we were observing them very closely. There didn't seem to be like a crossword at each other, apart from the general frustration at the result. A really massively impressive team. And I think that ethos comes all the way from the top. So from Steve all the way down, they seem to have just bred this attitude of let's go racing, work hard and be nice, which kind of fits with the Missed Apex philosophy as well.
Yeah, it's sort of like a Southern take on the basic Mercedes idea of, yes, things will go wrong and we will solve them, but it's kind of that has that no blame feel. Like we're all a family, we're all in this together, we're going to figure it out, we're going to make it work. And even between, going back to our driver view, even between the drivers, like, they're both willing to say, oh yeah, I learned something from him. I learned something from him. And yeah, if I'm slower, I'm going to let him go and I'll defend for him and vice versa. It's just the wildest thing, but you love to see it, don't you?
We are going to finish by speaking to their sim guy. They were really generous. They let me into their sim, Matt, and have a go on there. And I started practicing. I got told off by 2311, right? I started practicing at home on my rig, and I was scared. I was like, I don't know if this feels right on my hands. Like, is it stiff enough? Have I got the settings right? So I emailed and I tried to get the information, and then I got a message. So I obviously got back to Steve somehow, and then I got a message from Steve saying, stop. You're taking the sim side too seriously. We'll see you when you get here. Stop emailing. So I got there. And
I see. So you got in even more trouble than me. Okay, fair enough.
We both got in trouble for being, a bit too much and a bit overexcited. But yeah, I did get in the sim and I got a good few laps. So I got enough time to set a representative lap that I could be proud of, and failed to do so. Much harder actually under acceleration than you would have imagined. Like there's a lot more, you would think like they're big heavy cars. There's not that much challenge going into an oval. But the rear end really wanted to go. It was very difficult to manage the turn in. You had to pick the right line early, and then the ground isn't smooth. The ground has bumps and kinks and lines, and dealing with the banking. And the banking is different at one end than the other end. And yeah, it's a much bigger driving challenge than you would have thought. And so I did end up quite a bit down. I could have done better than I did, but you will hear me get a bit mocked by the sim guy.
Now, there's always next year.
So we will leave you on that note, but a few admin points. Firstly, thank you if you got this far for giving it a chance. And I hope you will, if you are tempted at all by what we've said, to go, right, I'm going to check out a NASCAR race. Go and bother 2311's official account on Twitter. And we'll put the links in the show notes below, and the team principal, Steve Lauletta's Twitter account as well. Go and bother him and say, we are going to check out some NASCAR because Spanners and Trumpets talked about it on the show. Thank you for indulging us. If you're a patron, patreon.com/missedapex. We are no longer in Slack. We had to move because a patron accidentally got charged $3,400 for clicking on the wrong thing. So we are gone. We're not using Slack anymore. Now you just link your Discord account to your Patreon account and it'll throw you into the Discord, and we're having a whale of a time in that community. It's going to open up so much more stuff we can do, including call-ins. Go and follow Matt at MattPT55. Follow me at SpannersReady. Click the links to 2311 below. And I'm going to leave you with a chat with their sim driver/driver coach. So at 2311, the next victim of our interviewing is the sim department. So we've got Keegan joining us, who is Chief Simmer. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, I like to call myself the chief simulator operator. Yeah,
nice.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
CSO. So yeah,
CSO. Yeah, I like it. I'll put it on my desk. So my name is Keegan Leahy. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and I was a professional iRacer by trade. So focused on competition, the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, and I also did coaching with Virtual Racing School for a few years. So around the 2020 pandemic situation, NASCAR decided to do real life racing drivers competing on iRacing for the pandemic series, or I think it was called the iRacing Pro Invitational Series. So they had all the NASCAR drivers doing races online. And that's how I really started getting involved with Denny Hamlin, who's our co-owner of 2311. So I got a good relationship with him, started coaching him for those pro invitational races. He ended up winning 2 of the races. And I was doing spotting and crew chiefing for him, all in one role. But that's how I got involved.
How did the drivers do translating into the sim world? What did you find, because we do a lot of sim racing here at Missed Apex, what did you find the drivers were lacking, if anything, in the sim world?
Yeah, a big thing for real-world drivers, and you'll hear this quite a lot, is in the simulator, you're lacking the seat of the pants feeling. So that's fancy word for G-forces. So you're not feeling the left to right motion or even the up and down motion that you get in the banking. It gives you a really good sense of speed in real life, but it's something we don't have hardly any of in the simulator, besides a bit of vibration or a little bit of motion. Can't go more than 1G because that's all we have for gravity on Earth, unfortunately.
Yeah. Obviously, these guys aren't trying to be iRacing champions beyond a bit of COVID entertainment. So what's the main thing they find this sim to be useful for in day-to-day NASCAR running?
We got it simulated pretty well where we can have individual seams and bumps in the simulator. So something we'll notice at Darlington in the upcoming race that you're going to go see is there's a really big patch in turns 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So hitting that patch is a really big shock in real life, and we have that modeled pretty well here. So that's a big talking point, being able to get over that patch, not only safely but also in a fast way.
Is that an error generator, that patch? Are we going to see some people hitting the wall after that?
Yeah, these cars are really stiff, so hitting that patch really upsets the car. You'll lose aerodynamics.
And everyone just
shocks
accepts
the tires.
that this is fine, and
it's fine. And it's the same for everybody. We all have to drive over it, so whoever can get over it the best will be fastest. So those are oval tracks. What the simulator really shines in, though, is road courses, especially new ones. Like when we went to Chicago for the first time last year, it was a track that was completely unknown. All we had was satellite images of the road that we're going to follow. So having that in
Street
the simulator,
View, Google Street View,
exactly.
There. Good.
So having the drivers being able to practice that in advance on a road course that we've never been to in real life, and showing up to the racetrack and knowing where the corners are, knowing where the braking points are, knowing where all those bumps are.
So you have the best sim time in general, even over the real world drivers. I have massive respect for esports, especially iRacing. So I rate that as its own complete skill. How do you think you would do if they put you in a real NASCAR?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have any data points for that. I haven't been in a real car before and driving it fast. Aside from go-karting, I haven't driven any oval racing. So I'd like to think I'd like to think I'd be fast.
Yeah.
But again, like I was saying, it's hard for a real-life driver to jump into sim racing not having any experience in it because you're lacking the seat of the pants feeling. Well, I'd be overloaded. I'd have too much going on. I'd be feeling all those bumps and G-forces and seeing a wall coming up to me at 200 miles an hour.
I'm happy in my sim as well. There's that thing, like, you got to go.
Feel safe.
It's kind of okay. Even when I do a rental cars, the first couple of times around the track, I always think, like, we could actually, we're in danger here if this goes wrong. Okay, so I jumped in the sim. Some people out there might be curious to know. Be honest, I got within 9/10, which on a street circuit would be pretty good. I'm guessing that's shocking.
Yeah, when I show up at a road course or a street circuit, if I'm 9/10 off the fastest guy, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I take that. Yeah,
9/10 off on an oval, you might want to put some more practice laps in there.
Steve told me not to. It's his fault. But I think what some people are really missing on this, and this is just a general NASCAR topic, is how much each turn or each end of an oval is completely different. And every time you're going around it, you're searching for the grip. And it's like 10 corners in one.
Yeah, especially Darlington, where we're coming up to this weekend. I think the story is that this was built in the 40s and 50s, this track, and they built around a swamp or a lake back in the day. So one end of the track is much more narrower than the other end. So, from space, it looks like it's a big circle, looks like it's oval and simple, but each end of the track is completely different. Very narrow in turns 3 and 4. Turns 1 and 2 is very wide and high banking. So one of the unique tracks on the circuit here where you got to set up the car and prepare the driver completely differently in turns 1 and 2 compared to the other end.
do you ever have to force the drivers into the sim? Do they ever have to be kind of like, no, you do need to do your sim time?
Yeah, we like to think it's very important for the drivers to get in, so we have a schedule for them.
Even if they don't quite agree about how important it is.
I'll put it that way, yeah.
And thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much too.
What am I doing? I can't leave you on that note. I've not said goodbye properly. That would be like not tucking in my kids. So until we see you next on Sunday, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast.